LaGuardia Drama Department's production of the Laramie Project. We ask you to please turn off any electronic devices and to refrain from texting, talking, or anything that might take away the enjoyment of the performance from the people around you. We also remind you that the recording of this production in any way is strictly prohibited. Thank you. And now please enjoy the Laramie Project.
To Laramie, Wyoming, and conducted interviews with the people of the town. During the next year, we would return several times and conduct over 200 interviews. The play you are about to see is edited from those interviews, as well as from journal entries by members of our company and other found texts. Company member Greg Perotti.
My first interview was with Detective Sergeant King of the Laramie Police Department. At the start of the interview, he was sitting behind his desk, sitting something like this. I was born and raised here. My grandparents moved here in the early 1900s, and we've had basically three. Well, my daughter makes it fourth generation. Quite a while. It's a good place to live, good people, lots of space. Now, all the towns in southern Wyoming are laid out in space because the railroad came through, and it was how far they could go before having to refuel and rewater. And Laramie was a major stopping point. That's why all the towns are spaced so far apart. We're one of the largest states in the country, and the least populated.
There is so much space between people and towns here, so much time for reflection.
Rebecca Hilliker, head of the theater department at the University of Wyoming.
You have an opportunity to be happy in your life here. I found that people here were much nicer than in the Midwest, where I used to teach, because they were happy. They were glad that the sun was shining, and it shines a lot here.
What you have your old-time, traditional-type ranchers. They've been here forever. Laramie's been the hub of where they come for their supplies and stuff like that.
Stewardship is one thing that all of our ancestors taught us.
Eileen Enkin, rancher.
If you don't take care of your land, then you ruin it and you lose your living. So first of all, you have to take care of it and do everything you can to improve it.
I love it here. Doc O'Connor lives Put me back in that mess out there back east. The best part about it is the climate. The cold, the wind. They say the Wyoming wind will drive a man insane, but you know what? It don't bother me. Well, some of the times it bothers me, but most of the time it don't. And then you've got the university population.
I moved here after living in a couple of big cities.
Philip Dubois, president of the University of Wyoming.
I loved it there, but you would have to be out of your mind to let your kids out after dark. And here in the summertime, my kids play out at night till 11, and I don't think twice about it.
And then you have the people who live in Laramie, basically.
I moved here from rural Texas.
That is Salmon, Laramie resident.
Now in Laramie, if you don't know a person, you'll definitely know someone they know. So it can only be 1 degree removed at most. And for me, I love it. I love going to the grocery store because I get to visit 4 or 5 or 6 people every time I go. And I don't mind people knowing my business. Because what's my business? My business is basically good.
I like the trains too. They don't bother me. Well, some of the times they bother me, but most of the time they don't. Even though one goes by every 13 minutes out where I live. Doc actually lives up in Bossler, but everyone here in Laramie knows him. He's also not really a doctor. They used to carry cattle, them trains, and all they carry is diapers and cars.
I grew up in Cody, Wyoming.
April Silva, university student.
Laramie's a lot better than where I used to live, I'll admit that.
It's a good place to live. Good people, lots of space. Now, when the incident happened with that boy, a lot of press people came here, and one time some of them followed me out to the crime scene, and well, it was a beautiful day, absolutely gorgeous day, real clear and crisp, and the sky was that blue that, you know, you'll never be able to paint. It's just sky blue. And the mountains in the background, a little snow on them. And there was this one reporter, lady, person that was out there. And she said,
Who was out there anyway? Who found the boy?
and I said, well, this is a really popular area for people to run, and mountain biking's really big out here, and horseback riding, it's just, well, it's close to town. And she looked at me and she said,
Who the hell would want to run out here?
and I'm thinking, lady, you are just missing the point. All you gotta do is turn around, see the mountains, smell the air, listen to the birds chirping, just take in what's around you. And they were just nothing but the story. I don't feel judged. I felt that they were stupid. They're missing the point. They're just missing the whole point.
It's hard to talk about Laramie now. To tell you what Laramie is for us.
Jedediah Schultz.
If you were asking me before, I would have told you that Laramie is a beautiful town. Secluded enough that you can have your own identity. A town with a strong sense of community. Everyone knows everyone. A town with a personality that most larger cities are robbed of. Now, after Matthew, I would say that Laramie is a town defined by an accident, a crime. You know, we've become Waco. We've become Jasper. We're a noun, a definition, a sign. We may be able to get rid of that, but it'll sure take a while.
Journal entries by members of our company, Andy Paris.
Moises called saying he had an idea for his next theater project, but there was a somberness to his voice, so I asked what it was about, and he told me he wanted to do a piece about what's happening in Wyoming.
Stephen Belger.
Lee told me that the company was thinking of going out to Laramie to conduct interviews and that they wanted me to come. But I'm hesitant. I have no real interest in prying into a town's unraveling. Amanda Gromich.
I've never done anything remotely like this in my life. How do you get people to talk to you? What do you ask? Moises Kaufman.
The company has agreed to go to Laramie for 1 week and interview people. Look, I'm a bit afraid about taking 10 people on a trip of this nature, It must make some safety rules. No one works alone. Everyone carries cell phones. I've made some preliminary contacts with Rebecca Hilliker at the theater department. She's hosting a party for us our first night in Laramie and is going to introduce us to possible interviewees.
I must tell you that when I first heard that you were thinking of coming here, when you first called me, I wanted to say you've just kicked me in my stomach. Why are you doing this to me? But then I thought, that's stupid. You're not doing this to me, and more importantly, I thought about it. And I decided that we've had so much negative closure on this whole thing. And the students really needed to talk. I mean, when this whole thing happened, the media descended and all dialogue stopped. You know, I really love my students because they are free thinkers. And you may not like what they have to say, and you may not like their opinions because they can be very redneck. They are honest, and they are truthful, so there's an excitement here. There's a dynamic here with my students that I never had in the Midwest or North Dakota, because there was so much Puritanism that dictated how people looked at the world, that a lot of times they didn't have an opinion. You couldn't get them to express an opinion. And quite honestly, I'd rather have opinions I didn't like and that dynamic in education. There's a student I think you should talk to. His name is Jedediah Schultz.
I've lived in Wyoming my whole life. The family has been in Wyoming for generations. Now, when it came time to go to college, my parents couldn't afford to send me to college. I wanted to study theater. And I knew that if I was going to go to college, that I was going to have to get in on a scholarship. So they have this competition each year, this Wyoming State High School competition. And I knew that if I didn't take first place in duets, that I wasn't going to get a scholarship. So I went to the theater department of the university looking for good scenes, and I asked one of the professors, I was like, I need a killer scene. And he was like, here you go. This is it. And it was from Angels in America. Yeah, and I read that scene, and I just knew that I could win best scene if I did a good enough job. So when the time came, I told my parents so that they would come to the competition. Now, you have to understand, my parents go to everything, every ball game, every hockey game, everything I've ever done. And they took me into their room. And they said that if I did that scene, that they wouldn't come see me in the competition. Because they believed that it was wrong. That homosexuality is wrong. They felt so strongly about that belief that they didn't want to come see their son do probably the most important thing he'd done to that point in his life. I didn't know what to do. I'd never, ever gone against my parents' wishes before, so I was worried about it. But I decided to do it. And all I can remember about the competition is that when we were done, me and my scene partner, we came up to each other, and we shook hands, and there was a standing ovation. Oh man, it was amazing. We took first place, we won. That's how come I can afford to be here at this university, because of that scene. It was one of the best moments of my life. And my parents weren't there. And to this day, that was the one thing that my parents didn't see me do. Thinking back on it, I guess I just think, why did I do it? Because I'm not gay, so why did I go against my parents' wishes? And I guess the only honest answer I can give is that I wanted to win. It was such a great scene. It was like the best scene. Oh, do you know Mr. Kushner? Maybe you could tell him.
Company member Greg Kahn.
We arrived in the Denver airport and we drove to Laramie. As we were crossing the Wyoming border, I swear I saw a herd of buffalo. Also, I thought it was strange that the said,
Wyoming, like no place on earth.
instead of Wyoming, like no place else on earth.
Company member Lee Fondakowski.
I stop at a local inn for a bite to eat, and my waitress says to me,
Hi, my name is Debbie. I was born in 1954, and Debbie Reynolds was big back then, so yeah, there are a lot of us around. But don't worry, I promise I won't slap you. Keep your elbows on the table.
Today, the company tried to explain to me, to no avail, what chicken fried steak was.
Now, are you all from Wyoming or just passing through?
just passing through.
Company member Barbara Pitts.
We arrived here in Laramie tonight, just past the Welcome to Laramie sign, population 26,687. The first thing to greet us was a Walmart. Now in the dark, we could be on any main drag in America, fast food chains, gas stations, but as we drove into the downtown area by the railroad tracks, the buildings still looked like the shape of a turn-of-the-century western town. Oh, and as we passed the University Inn, on signs where amenities such as heated pool or cable TV are usually touted, it said, "Hate is not a Laramie value."
I met today with two longtime Laramie residents, Allison Mears and Marge Murray, two social service workers who taught me a thing or two.
Wow, what Laramie used to be like when Marge was growing up, well, it was mostly rural.
Yeah, it was. I really enjoyed it, you know. All my kids had horses.
Well, there was more land. I mean, you could keep your horse, your pet chickens, you know, just have your little bit of acreage.
Yeah, I could run around the house in my all-togethers, do the housework while the kids were at school, and nobody could see me. And if they got that close...
Well, then that is their problem.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure I got the expression right. In your all-togethers?
Well, yeah, honey. Well, we're close.
Now, how's he going to use that in his play?
So this was a big ranching town.
Oh, not just ranching. This was a big railroad town at one point before they moved everything to Cheyenne and Green River and Omaha. So now, well, it's just a drive-through spot for the railroad because even, what was it, in the 50s? Well, they had one big roundhouse and they had such a shop that they could build a complete engine.
Yeah, they did. My mom worked there.
Your mom worked in a roundhouse?
Yeah, her name's Minnie. She washed engines. We used to sing that song for her. You know that song.
What song?
Run for the roundhouse, Minnie. They can't corner you.
But I'll tell you, Wyoming is bad in terms of jobs. I mean, you have the big, high, whoop-de-doo jobs at the university, but Wyoming, unless you're a professional, well, the bulk of the people are working minimum wage jobs.
Yeah, I've been either in the service industry or bartending my whole life. Now I know everybody in town.
And she does.
And I do. But I'll tell you, there's a difference here in Laramie. There always has been. What is a class distinction? You've got the well-educated and the ones that are not. And the well-educated don't understand why the ones that are not don't get educated. That's why I told you before my kids had to fight because their mother was a bartender. Never mind, I was the best damn bartender in town!
And she was!
That's not right. That's fact.
But here in Laramie, if it weren't for the university, well, we'd just be SOL.
What's SOL?
Well, do I have to say it? Well, it's shit out of luck. Oh, Lord, you've got that on your tapes now. Boy, you are getting an education today.
So, let me ask you, what was your response when this happened to Matthew Shepard?
Well, I've been close enough to the case to know a lot of the people. I've got a daughter on the sheriff's department. As for the gay issue, I don't give a damn one way or another just as long as they don't bother me. And even if they did, I'd just say, no thank you. And that's the attitude of most of the Laramie population. They might poke one if they've been in a bar situation. They've been drinking, you know. Might even slap one in the mouth, but then they just say, I don't swing that way, and whistle on about their business. Laramie is live and let live.
I'd say Marge probably knows a lot more, except she's even willing to say it, and we have to respect her for that.
Where'd you say you were going with the story again?
Oh, well, we still haven't decided, but when we're finished, we're going to try and bring it around to Laramie.
Oh. Well, then there are some things I won't tell you.
Company member Andy Paris.
Today, for the first time, we met someone who actually knew Matthew Shepard. Trish Dager, owner of a shop in town, referred to him as Matt.
Matt used to come into my shop. That's how I knew him.
It was the first time we heard him referred to as Matt instead of Matthew. Did he go by Matt with everyone?
Well, on the 2nd of October, I get a phone call about 10 after 7.
Doc O'Connor.
It was Matthew Shepard. He said, "Can you pick me up on the corner of 3rd and Grand?" So anyhow, I pull up to the corner to see who Matthew Shepard, you know. It's a little guy. Now 5'2", soaking wet, I bet you 97 pounds. Tops. They say he weighed 110, but I wouldn't believe it. They also said he was 5'5" in the newspapers, but this man, he was really only about 5'2", maybe 5'1". So he comes up the window. I'm going to try and go in steps now so you can better understand the principle of this man. So he comes up the window, and I say, "Are you Matthew Shepard?" And he says, "Yeah, I am Matthew Shepard, but I don't want you to call me Matthew or Mr. Shepard. I don't want you to call me anything. My name is Matt, and I want you to know that I am gay, and we are going to a gay bar. Do you have a problem with that?" And I said, "How are you paying?" The fact is, Laramie doesn't have any gay bars, and for that matter, neither does Wyoming. So he was hiring me to take him to Fort Collins, Colorado, about an hour away. Matt was a blunt little shit. You know what I'm saying? He always was. But I liked him, because he was straightforward. You see what I'm saying? Maybe gay, but straightforward.
I don't know, you know. How does any one person ever tell you about him? You should really talk to my sister, Romaine. She was a very close friend of Matthew's.
We never called him Matthew, actually. Most of the time, we called him Choo Choo. No, because we used to call him Matthew. And then we just called him Choo Choo. And whenever I think of Matthew, I think of his incredible beaming smile. I mean, he'd walk in and he'd be like, he'd smile at everyone. He just made you feel great. And he would stare people down in the coffee shop because he always wanted to sit on the end seat so he could talk to me while I was working. And if someone was in that seat, he would just sit there and stare at them until they left. And then he would claim his spot. But Matthew definitely had a political side to him. I mean, he really wanted to get into political affairs. That was all a big interest of his was watching CNN or MSNBC. I mean, it's the only TV station I ever saw his TV tune into. He was just really smart in political affairs. But not so smart on, like, common sense things. So he moves to Laramie to go to school.
Matthew was very shy when he first came in. John Peacock, Matthew Shepard's academic advisor, to the point of being somewhat mousy, I'd almost say. He was having some difficulties adjusting, but this was home for him, and he made that quite clear. And so his mousiness, his shyness, gave way to someone who was excited about this track that he was going to embark on. He was just figuring out wanting to work on human rights, how he was going to do that. And when that happens, this person begins to bloom a little bit. He was starting to say, wow, there are opportunities here. There are things I can do in this world. I can be important.
I did hear from Matthew 48 hours before his attack. And he told me that he had joined the gay and lesbian group on campus. And he said he was enjoying it. You know, he was getting ready for Pride Week and whatnot. I mean, he was totally stoked about school. Yeah, he
retrospect, and I can only say this in retrospect, of course, I think that's where he was heading, towards human rights, which only adds to the irony and tragedy of this.
Let me tell you something else here. There are more gay people in Wyoming than meets the eye. I know for a fact. They're not particularly what do you call them? The gay people. The queens, the gay people. Faggot type people, no. They're the ones that throw bales of hay, jump on horses, brand them and kick ass. See what I'm saying? As I always say, don't fuck with a Wyoming queer, because they will kick you in your fucking ass. But, that's not the point of what I'm trying to say here. Because I know a lot of gay people in Wyoming. I know a lot of people, period. Because I've lived up here for some 40-odd years, and I don't think Wyoming people give a damn one way or another. If you're gay or you're straight, and it's just what I just said, it doesn't matter. There's 8 men and 1 woman in a Wyoming bar, which is often the case now. You stop and think, who's getting what? See what I'm saying? It don't take a big intelligent mind to figure that one out.
My understanding when I first came here, Catherine Connolly, is that I was the first gay or lesbian faculty member on campus, and that was in 1992, so that wasn't that long ago. I was asked in my first interview what my husband did, so I came out then. Do you want a funny story? When you first come here, there's all these things you have to do, and I was in my office, and I noticed that this woman called. And I was expecting, a health insurance phone call, something like that, so I call her back, and I say, "Hi, this is Kathy Connolly, returning your phone call," and she says, "Oh, it's you." And I thought, this is bizarre, and she said, I hear you're gay. I hear you are." And I said, "Uh-huh." And she said, "I hear you came here as a couple. I'm one too, not a couple, just a person." And so it turns out that she was a type of lesbian who knew that I was coming, and she wanted to come over and meet with me immediately. And she later told me that there were other lesbians that she knew who didn't want to be seen with me, who thought that I would irreparably taint them, that just to be seen with me would be an issue.
When I came here, I knew it was going to be hard as a gay man.
Jonas Sloneker.
But I kept telling myself, people should live where they want to live. And there'd be times where I'd go down to Denver and I'd go to one of the gay bars, and people would ask me where I was from. And I'd say Laramie, Wyoming. And I met so many men down there from Wyoming, so many gay men who grew up here. And they're like, "Oh, this is not a place where I could live. How could you live there? I had to get out." But once in a while, there'd be a guy. Like, "Oh gosh, I miss Laramie. I love it there. I mean, that's where I want to live." And they'd get this, starry-eyed look. And I'm like, if that's where you want to live, then do it. Because imagine if more gay people stayed in small towns. But that's easier said than done, of course. Today we are heading from our motel to the Best Western.
Moises Kaufman.
My hope is that it is a better Western.
Today we divided up to go to different churches within the community. Moises and I were given a Baptist church. We were welcomed into the services by the Reverend himself, who was standing at the entrance to the chapel. This is what I remember of his sermon that morning.
My dear brothers and sisters, I'm here today to bring you the word of the Lord. Now I have a simple truth that I tell to my colleagues, and I'm going to tell to you today. The word is either sufficient or it is not. Scientists tell me that human history, that the world is 5 billion or 6 billion years old. After all, what's a billion years, give or take, huh? The Bible tells me that human history is 6,000 years old. The word is either sufficient or it is not.
Ah, the sociology of religion in the West.
Stephen Meade Johnson, Unitarian minister.
Dominant religious traditions in this town. We have Baptist. We have Mormon. They're all over. It's not just Salt Lake, you know. They're everywhere. They're like jam on toast down here.
The Mormon church has a different thing going that irritates some folks. Doug Laws, the state ecclesiastical leader for the Mormon church. And that is that we absolutely believe that God still speaks to man. We don't think that it just happened and some folks wrote it in the Bible. God speaks to us today, and we believe that. We believe that the prophet of the church has the authority to receive inspiration and revelation from God.
So, the spectrum would be, on the left side of that spectrum, so far left that I am probably sitting by myself, is me, and the Unitarian church. Unitarians are by and large humanists, many of whom are atheists, so you know, we're not even really sure if we're a real religion. And to my right on the spectrum, to his credit, Father Roger, Catholic priest who is well established here. And God bless him, he did not equivocate at all when this happened. He hosted the vigil for Matthew that night.
I was really jolted, because when we did the vigil, we wanted to get some other ministers involved. And so we called some of them, and they were just not going to get involved. And it was like we were going to stand back and wait and see which way the wind is blowing. And that angered me immensely, because we are supposed to stand out as leaders. And I thought, wow, what's going on here?
God has set boundaries, and one of our responsibilities is to learn. What is it that God wants? And so you study scripture, you look to your leaders, then you know what the bounds are. Now, once you know what the bounds are, you sort of get a sense of what's out of bounds. There's a proclamation that came out on family. Family is defined as one woman, one man, and children. That's a family. That's about as clear as you can state it. There is no sexual deviation in the Mormon church, no leniency. We just think it's out of bounds.
I warn you, you will be mocked. You will be ridiculed for the singularity of your faith, but you let the Bible be your guide. It's in there. It's all in there.
Christian pastors, many of the conservative ones, were silent on this. Conservative Christians use the Bible to show, well, it says here in the Bible. And most Americans believe, and they do, that the Bible is the Word of God. And well, how are you going to fight with that?
I'm a biblicist, which means that the Bible doesn't need me to be true. The Bible is true whether I believe it or not. The Word is either sufficient or it is not.
I arrived in Laramie on September 15th. I looked around cement, tumbleweeds, factories, and I said, what in the hell am I doing in Wyoming? Well, 3 weeks later, I found out exactly what the hell I'm doing in Wyoming. This morning with university student Zubaida Ullah. She's an Islamic feminist who likes to do things her own way.
I've lived in Laramie since I was 4. My parents moved here from Bangladesh, and 2 years ago, because I'm Muslim, I decided to start wearing a scarf. And that really changed my life in Laramie. Yeah, like, people will say things to me like, why do you wear that thing on your head? And when I'm at the grocery store, I'm not really looking to give people Islam 101. So I'll be like, oh, well, it's part of my religion. And this is the worst part, because they'll be like, yeah, I know it's part of your religion, but why? It's like, how am I supposed to go into the whole doctrine of physical modesty and my own spiritual relationship with the Lord while I'm standing there with my pop and chips? You know what I mean? Yeah. You know, it's so unreal to me that a group from New York would be doing a play about Laramie. Like, I'm picturing you're going to be in a play about my town. Like, you're going to be on stage in New York, and you're going to be acting like you're us. That's so weird.
Hello. Yes, hello. My name is Amanda Gronich, and I'm here in Laramie working with a theater company. I went to your husband's services on Sunday, and I was extremely interested in talking with the Reverend about some of his thoughts about recent events.
Well, I don't think he'll want to talk with you. He has very biblical views on homosexuality. He doesn't condone that kind of violence, but he doesn't condone that kind of lifestyle. And he was just bombarded with the press after this thing happened, and the media's just been terrible about this.
Yes, I really understand it. It must have just been terrible.
Oh, yes, I think we're all hoping this just goes away.
Well, do you think I could maybe call back and speak with your husband just briefly?
Well, all right, you can call him back tonight at 9.
Oh, thank you so much. I'll do that.
Today, Barbara and I went to the Fireside Bar, the last place Matthew was seen in public.
The Fireside definitely feels like a college bar with a couple of pool tables and a stage area for karaoke night. Still, the few regulars in the late afternoon were hardly the college crowd.
The first person that we talked to was Matt Mickelson, the owner.
My great-great-grandfather moved here in 1862. He opened Laramie's first opera house. It was called the Old Blue Front. And in 1870, Louisa Grandma Swain cast the first woman's ballot in any free election in the world, and that's why Wyoming is the equality state. And so what I'm trying to do is reestablish my bar business as the Old Blue Front Opera House and Good Times Emporium. I want to have a restaurant, and a pool hall, and a gift shop, and all that shit. Every night's ladies' night, of course. So the Fireside is the first step towards the Old Blue Front Opera House and Good Times Emporium.
So, what about the night that Matthew Shepard was here?
We had karaoke that night. About 20 or 30 people. Matthew Shepard came, sat, and we were sitting. You know, if you want to talk to someone, you should talk to Matt Galloway. He's the kid who was bartending that night. His personality speaks for itself. Hey, is Galloway bartending tonight?
Okay, I'm gonna make this quick, brief, get it over with, but it will be everything factual. Just the facts. Here we go. 10 o'clock, I clock in, usual time, Tuesday nights. 10:30, Matthew Shepard shows up, sits down, orders a Heineken.
Phil LaBrie, friend of Matthew Shepard.
Matt liked to drink Heineken and nothing else. Heineken. Even though you have to pay $9.50 for a whole six-pack, he would always buy the same beer.
So what can I tell you about Matt? If you had 100 customers just like him, it'd be the most perfect bar I'd ever been in. And nothing to do with sexual or orientation, right? Absolute mannerisms, right? Manners, politeness, intelligence, taking care of me, as in tips. There's just everything. Some people you just know, you're dressed nice, clean cut. Some people you just know sits down, please, thank you. Offers intellect within their vocabulary. So, you know, Matt just, he kicks it there. Doesn't seem to have any worries, or like he's looking for anybody, just enjoying his drink, the company around. Now, approximately 11:30, 11:45, 11:30, Aaron McKinney and Russell Henderson show up. Now, I didn't know their names then, but they're the accused, the perps. They're the accused. So, they show up, and just very stone-faced, you know, dirty, grungy, rude, gimme, that type of thing. They walk up and, as you know, walk up to the bar. They paid for a pitcher with dimes and quarters. Which, I mean, is something you don't forget. $5.50 in dimes and quarters. That's a freaking nightmare. So they, they walk up to the bar. didn't seem to, they didn't, Aaron and Russell, they didn't seem intoxicated at all. They just walk up to the bar, buy a pitcher, take it back with them into the pool room. Now, mostly keep to themselves, but about a half hour later, they're sort of wandering around, no beer. And I remember thinking to myself, I am not going to ask them if they want another one because they just paid for a pitcher with dimes and quarters. Pretty sure they don't got any more money.
Romaine Patterson. Money meant nothing to Matthew because he came from a lot of it. And he would hand over his wallet in 2 seconds because money meant nothing. His shoes might have meant something. They can say it was robbery. I don't buy it for even an iota of a second.
Then, a few moments later, I look over, and Aaron and Russell had been talking to Matthew Shepard.
Aaron said that a guy walked up to him. He said that he was gay and he was trying to get with Aaron and Russ.
Kristen Price, girlfriend of Aaron McKinney.
And Aaron got aggravated with it. He said he was straight and he wanted nothing to do with it and walked off. That's when him and Russ went to the back and decided they'd pretend to be gay so they can get him in the truck and rob him. They wanted to teach him a lesson not to come on to straight people.
Okay, no. No. They stated that Matt came on to them, that he came on to them. I absolutely, positively disbelieve and refute that statement 100%. Refute it. And I'm going to give you 2 reasons why. 1, character reference. Why would Matt approach them? Why them? He wasn't approaching anyone else in the bar. They say he's gay, he's a flaming gay, he's going to come on to them. Bullshit. He never came on to me. Hello? He came on to them, I don't believe it. 2, territorialism is the word I will use for this. And that is the fact that Matt was sitting there. Aaron and Russell were back there in the pool area. Upon their first interaction, they were in Matt's area, the area Matt had been seen in all night. So who approached who by that?
But Matthew was the kind of person, he would never not talk to someone for any reason. If someone started talking to him, he'd just be like, oh, blah, blah, blah. I mean, he never had any problem just striking up a conversation with anybody.
Matt did feel lonely a lot of times. And me knowing that, and me knowing how gullible he could be, he would have walked right into that. The fact that he was alone at the bar, didn't have any friends with him, just made him that much more vulnerable.
So the only thing I'm saying is, and this is also what I'm testifying, because I'm also sort of basically the key eyewitness to this trial. So what I'm saying is, I saw Matt leave. I saw 2 figures leave with Matthew. No, I didn't see their faces, but I saw the backs of their heads. And at the same time, Aaron and Russell were no longer around. You do the math.
Actually, I think the DJ was the last one to speak to Matthew Shepard. Gave him a cigarette or something. His name was Shadow.
I was the last person to talk to Matt that night at the fireside. I was just bullshitting around my shit, and he stopped me, or I stopped him, and he was like, hey, Shadow, and I was like, hey, man, you getting ready to leave? And he's like, yeah, man, and this and that, and then I noticed these 2 guys, they stood outside, and you could see them. They were standing there, and he was looking over at them, and they were looking back at him, and I stood there talking to Matt for a good, 10 minutes, and then I noticed them getting real worried, anxious to leave and shit. And when they took off, I seen it when they took off. It was a black truck. It was a small truck, and the 3 of them sat in the front. Matt in the middle. I didn't think anything of it. I didn't figure them guys just gonna drive
A friend of Aaron McKinney.
Oh, I've known Aaron a long time. Aaron was a good kid. I liked Aaron a lot. That's why I was shocked when I heard this. I'm like, I knew he was living out far. At his trailer house is what he told me, with his girl. They just started dating last summer. They must have gotten pregnant as soon as they started dating. Because they had a kid. He was only 21 years old and he was running around with a kid. You see, that's the type of person Aaron was. You know, he was always just like dressed in like, you know, like big clothes and like Tommy Hilfiger, Polo, Gucci. At the time I knew him, he was just a young kid trying to, you know, he just wanted to fit in, you know, acting tough, acting cool, but you could get in his face about it, and he would just back down like he was some kind of scared kid.
Sherry Annenson.
Russell was just so sweet. He was the one that was the Eagle Scout. I mean, his whole presence was just quiet and sweet, and I mean, of course it doesn't make sense to me, and I know people snap and whatever, and like, it wasn't a real intimate relationship. I was just his landlord. I did work with him over at the Chuck Wagon, too. I remember at the Christmas party at the Chuck Wagon, you know, he was just totally drunk out of his mind. I mean, we were all pretty much just like party time, but he wasn't belligerent. He didn't change. His personality didn't change. He was still the same little meek Russell. I remember him coming up to me and saying, "When you've a chance, Sherry, could I get a dance?" Which we never did get around to doing that. But now I just want to shake him, you know? Like, what were you thinking? What in the hell were you thinking?
The fence? Well, I've been out there 4 times. I've taken visitors. That place has become a pilgrimage site. I mean, clearly that is a very powerful and personal experience to go out there. I mean, it is so stark and so empty. And you can't help but think of Matthew out there for 18 hours in nearly freezing temperatures, and with that view up there, all isolated, and the God, my God, why have you forsaken me? Comes to mind.
Company member Greg Perotti. Phil Labrie, a friend of Matthew's, took us to the fence this morning. I broke down the minute I touched it. I feel such a strong kinship with this young man. On the way back, I made sure that no one saw me crying. Lee Fondakowski.
Greg was crying on the way back. Yeah, I couldn't bring myself to tears, but I felt the same way. I have an interview this afternoon with Aaron Kreifels. He's the boy who found Matthew out there at the fence. I don't think about it right now. We'll see someone else.
Well, I took off on my bicycle about 5 o'clock p.m. from my dorm. I just kind of felt like going for a ride, so I went to the top of Cactus Canyon, and I'm not super familiar with that area, so on my way back down, I didn't know where I was going. I was just sort of picking the way to go, which now makes me think that God wanted me to find him, because there was no way that I was going to go that way. So I was in some deep ass sand, and I wanted to turn around, but for some reason I kept going, and I went along, and there was this rock on the ground, and I just drilled it. I mean, I went over the handlebars and ended up on the ground. So I got up, and I was just sort of dusting myself off, and I noticed something, which ended up to be Matt. He was just lying there by a fence, so I thought it was a scarecrow. I'm like, Halloween's coming up. I thought it was a Halloween gag. So I didn't think much of it. So I got my bike, walked it around the fence that was there. It was a buck-type fence. And I got closer, and I noticed his hair. And that was a major key to me. Noticing it was a human being was his hair. Because I just thought it was a dummy, you know? I even noticed the chest going up and down. I still thought it was just a dummy. I thought it was like some sort of mechanism, but when I saw hair, well, that's when I knew it was a human being. So I just ran to the nearest house. I ran as fast as I could, and I called the police.
I responded to the call. Officer Reggie Flutie. When I got there, at first, the only thing I could see was partially somebody's feet. And I got out of my vehicle and I raced over. I seen what appeared to be a young man, 13, 14 years old because he was so tiny, lying on his back, and he was tied to the bottom end of a pole. I did the best I could. The gentleman that was lying on the ground, Matthew Shepard, he was covered in partially dry blood and blood all over his head. There was dry blood underneath him, and he was barely breathing. He was doing the best he could. I was going to breathe for him, and I couldn't get his mouth open. His mouth wouldn't open for me. He was covered in, like I said, partially dry blood and blood all over his head. The only place where he didn't have any blood on him, on his face, was what appeared to be where he had been crying down his face. His head was distorted. You know, it did not look normal. It looked as if he had a real harsh head wound.
I was working the hospital the night that Matthew Shepard was brought in. And I don't think that any of us can remember seeing someone in that condition for a long time. I mean, those of us who have worked in a big city hospital have, but we have some people here who haven't worked in a big city hospital, and it's not something that you just expect here. Well, I mean, you expect it. You expect to see this kind of thing from a car going 80 miles an hour down the hill or something like that, you know? These gross, awful injuries from something like that, but you don't expect to see this from someone doing that to another person. And the ambulance report said that it was a beating, so we knew.
There was nothing I could do. I mean, if there was anything that I could have done to help him, I would have done it, but there was nothing. And I just kept yelling at the top of my lungs, trying to get something out of him, like, hey, wake up, hello? But he didn't move. He didn't flinch. He didn't anything.
He was tied to the fence. His hands were thumbs out in what we call a cuffing position, the way we handcuff people. And he was bound with a real thin white rope. It went around the bottom of the fence, around about 4 inches up off the ground. His shoes were missing. He was bound extremely tight, and so I got my boot knife and tried to slip it between the rope and his wrists. I had to be extremely careful not to harm Matthew any further.
Your first thought is, well, certainly you'd like to think that it comes from someone out of town who comes through and beats somebody. I mean, things happen, you know? Shit happens, and it happens in Laramie, but the fact that someone has been beaten repeatedly, I mean, that's certainly something that offends us. Yeah, I think that's a good word, it offends us.
He was bound so tight. I finally got the knife through there. I'm sorry. We turned him onto his left side, and when we did that, he quit breathing. Immediately, I put him back on his back, and that was just enough of an adjustment. It gave me enough room to cut him free there. I seen the EMS unit trying to get to the location. Once they arrived, we put a neck collar on him, put him on a backboard, and scooted him from underneath the fence. Then Rob drove the ambulance to Ivinson Hospital's emergency room.
Now, the strange thing is, 20 minutes before Matthew came in, brought in by his girlfriend. Now, I guess he'd gotten into a fight earlier on that night back in town, and so I'm working on Aaron. And then the ambulance shows up with Matthew, and so I tell Aaron to wait, and I go treat Matthew, and I've got Aaron in one room of the hospital and Matthew in another room, 2 doors down. And as soon as we saw Matthew, we knew that his care was beyond our capabilities, and so I called the neurosurgeon down in Puget Valley Hospital in Fort Collins, Colorado, and he was on the road in an hour and 15 minutes, I think.
They showed me a picture. Days later, I saw a picture of Matthew. I would have never recognized him.
And 2 days later, I found out the connection. I was very struck. I mean, they were 2 kids. They were both my patients, and they were 2 kids. And I took care of both of them, of their bodies. And for a brief moment, I wondered if this is how God feels when he looks down on us. How we are all his children. Our bodies, our souls, and I felt a great deal of compassion for both of them.
Welcome back. And this is just a quick reminder for you to turn off your cell phones again and enjoy the rest of the show.
This is John Peacock, Matthew's academic advisor.
The news reports started trickling in on Thursday, but no names were mentioned. The brutality of the crime wasn't mentioned. All that was mentioned was that there was a man, Laramie man, found beaten out on the prairie, basically. Later on in the evening, they mentioned his name, and I was like, that can't be the Matthew Shepard that I know. That's not my student. That's not this person who I've been meeting with.
I was in the coffee shop, Romaine Patterson, and someone pulls me aside and says, I don't know much, but they say that there's been a young man who's been beaten in Laramie, and they said his name was Matthew Shepard. And he said, do you think this could be our Matthew? And I said, well, yeah, it sounds like it could be our Matthew. So I called up my sister Trish, and I said, tell me what you know. I need to know anything you know because I don't know anything.
So, I'm talking to my sister on the phone, and that's when the whole story came up on Channel 5 News, and I'm just like, ba-boom.
The news reports kept rolling in. Young University of Wyoming student, his age, his description, and it's like, oh my God.
And I'm just sick to my stomach. It's just instantly sick. And I had to tell Romaine, yes, it was Matthew. It was your friend.
Well, I'll tell you what is overwhelming.
Matt Galloway.
Friday morning, I first find out about it. I go to class, walk out, boom! There it is, in the branding iron. So immediately I drive out to the nearest newsstand, buy a copy of the Laramie Boomerang, because I want more details. Buy that, go home, before I can even open the paper. My boss calls me, and he's like, did you hear what happened? And I go, yeah.
Was he in the bar on Tuesday night?
I'm like, yeah, yes, he was.
You've got to get down here. We've got to talk about this. We've got to discuss what's going to go on now.
By this time, I was starting to get upset, but still, the severity wasn't out yet.
It was Thursday afternoon.
Rule on Stacy at Pooter Valley Hospital.
I got a call. We just got a kid in from Wyoming, and it looks like he may be the victim of a hate crime. We have a couple of reporters here asking questions. And so we agreed that we needed one spokesperson. As CEO, I will do that, and we will try and gather all the information that we can.
And I watched the 10 o'clock news that night, where they started speaking about the nature and the seriousness of it.
So I'm on the phone with my boss, Mickelson, right? And he's like,
We need to go to the arraignment so we can identify these guys and make sure that they were in the bar that night.
so, we go to the arraignment.
Our focus tonight turns to Laramie, Wyoming, and the Albany County Courthouse, where Aaron James McKinney and Russell Arthur Henderson are being charged with the brutal beating of Matthew Shepard, a gay University of Wyoming student.
The arraignment was on Friday, right around lunchtime, and I said, I'm just going. I just took off. So I walked a few blocks and I went. Has anyone told you about the arraignment? There were probably 100 people from the town and just as many news people at that point. A lot more of the details had come out. The fact that the perpetrators were kids themselves, local kids that everyone in town had some relationship to, and everyone, I think, was waiting on pins and needles to see what would happen when the perpetrators walked in. And what happened was there's 200 people in the room at this point, and they walk in with their complete orange jumpsuits and their shackles, and you could have heard a pin drop. It was incredibly solemn. A lot of people were teary at that point, and then the judge comes in and does a reading. It's just a reading of the facts. And the facts were?
The essential facts are that the defendants, Aaron James McKinney and Russell Arthur Henderson, met Matthew Shepard at the Fireside Bar. And after Mr. Shepard confided he was gay, the subjects deceived Mr. Shepard into leaving with them in their vehicle to a remote area. Upon arrival at said area, the subjects tied their victim to a buck fence, robbed him, tortured him, and beat him. Both defendants were later contacted by officers of the Laramie Police Department, who observed in the cab of their pickup a credit card and a pair of black patent leather shoes belonging to the victim, Matthew Shepard. The subjects took the victim's credit card, wallet containing cash, his shoes, other items, and obtained the victim's address in order to later burglarize his home.
And I don't think there was a single person in that courtroom who wasn't crying by the end of it. I mean, it only lasted 5 minutes, but it kept on getting more and more horrific, ending with...
Said defendants left the victim begging for his life.
Sergeant Higg.
How could this happen? I think a lot of people don't understand, and even I don't really understand how someone can do something like that. We have one of the most vocal populations of gay people in the state. And it's pretty much live and let live.
Laramie resident Jeffrey Lockwood.
My secret hope was that they were from somewhere else. That then, of course, you can create that distance. We don't grow children like that here. Well, it's pretty clear we do grow children like that here.
So that was the arraignment. And my response was pretty catatonic. I mean, not sleeping, not eating. Don't leave me alone right now.
More and more details came out about the sheer brutality, motivations, how this happened. And then, quite frankly, the media descended and there was no time to reflect on it anymore.
Laramie, Wyoming, often called the gem city of the plains, is now at the eye of the storm. The cowboy state has its rednecks and yahoos for sure, but there are no more bigots per capita in Wyoming than there are in Florida, New York, or California. The only difference is that in Wyoming, there are less places to blend in if you're anything other than prairie stock.
Aaron McKinney and his friend Russell Henderson came from the poorer side of town. Both were from broken homes and had had run-ins with the law. They lived in trailer parks and had scratched out a living working in fast food restaurants and fixing roofs.
As a gay college student lay hospitalized in critical condition after severe beating, this small city, which built itself Wyoming's hometown, wrestled with its attitudes towards gay men.
People would
not like to think that what happened to Matthew was an exception to the rule, but it was an extreme version of what happens in our schools on a daily basis.
It's a tough business, as Matt knew, and as his friends all know, to be gay in cowboy country.
It was huge. Yeah, it was herds, and we're talking hundreds of reporters, which makes a huge dent in this town's population. There's news reporters everywhere, news trucks everywhere on campus, everywhere in town. And we're not used to that type of attention to begin with. We're not used to that type of exposure.
Tiffany Edwards, local reporter.
These people are predators. I mean, this one journalist guy actually caught one of the judges in the bathroom at the urinal and started asking him questions. And the judge was like, "Excuse me, can I have some privacy, please?" And the journalist was like offended that he had asked for privacy. I mean, this is not how journalism started, like the Gutenberg press, you know.
I'll tell you what, when hard copy came and taped me, I taped them at the exact same time. I have every word I ever said on tape, because if they ever try to do anything funny, they better watch their fucking ass.
Wyoming Governor Jim Geringer, a first-term Republican up for re-election.
I am outraged and sickened by the heinous crimes committed against Matthew Shepard. I extend my most heartfelt sympathies to the family.
Governor, you haven't passed hate crime legislation in the past.
I would like to urge the people of Wyoming against overreacting in a way that would give certain people special rights over the other. We will wait to see if this vicious crime was motivated by hate.
What you have is, you have the beginning of the news story where they have the graphics in the background, and they've got murder in Wyoming, and Wyoming's like dripping red, like it's got blood on it or something, and it's like, what is this? This is sensationalism, and we're here going, wait a minute, we had the guys in jail in less than a day. I think that's pretty damn good.
And to be more or less maligned, Eileen and Gil, and that we're not good people, and most of us here are good people.
You get some bad apples once in a while, and I think that the gay community took this as an advantage. So this is a good time for us to exploit this.
Bill McKinney, father of the accused.
Had it been a heterosexual the two boys decided to take out and rob, this would have never made the national news. Now my son's guilty before he's even had a trial.
And I guess the media actually made people accountable. I mean, people were sitting at home, watching TV, listening to CNN, watching Dan Rather, and going, "Well, Jesus Christ, it's not like this here." Well, what is it like here?
Matthew Shepard medical update at 3 p.m. Saturday, October 10th.
By this point, I looked out, and where there had been 2 or 3 reporters, there must have been 10 or 15 still photographers, another 20 or 30 reporters, and 10 video cameras. The parents had barely arrived. I had just introduced myself to them. I looked out there and I thought, my gosh, what am I going to do? Matthew Shepard arrived in critical condition approximately 9 p.m. October 7th. When he arrived, he was unresponsive and breathing support was being provided. Matthew's major injuries upon arrival consisted of hypothermia and a fracture from behind the head to just in front of the right ear. This has caused pressure in the brain as well as bleeding in the brain. There were also several lacerations on his head, face, and neck. Matthew's parents arrived approximately 7 p.m. October 9th and are now at his bedside. The following is a statement from them. First of all, we want to thank the American public for their kind thoughts about Matthew and their fond wishes for his speedy recovery. We appreciate your prayers and goodwill, and we know that they are something that Matthew would appreciate too. We also have a special request from members of the media. Matthew is very much in need of his family at this time, and so we ask that you respect our privacy as well as Matthew's, so that we may focus all of our efforts, thoughts, and love on our son. Thank you very much.
device, also pled not guilty after being charged as accessories after the theft. On our next trip, we spoke with Chief Investigating Officer on the case, Detective Rod Debris of the Alameda County Sheriff's Department.
I guess the thing that bothered me the most was when I went down to Puja Valley where Matthew was. And the thing that bothered me is seeing him, touching him. As a homicide detective, you look at bodies. This poor boy is sitting here, fighting all his life trying to make it. I wanted it so by the book, you know?
I keep seeing that picture in my head of when I found him.
Aaron Kriples.
And it's not pleasant whatsoever. I don't want it to be there. I want to get it out. And that's the biggest part for me, is seeing that picture of him in my head. And it's kind of unbelievable to me, that I happen to be the one who found him. Because the big question with me, with my religion, is why did God want me to find him?
I know how to take care of myself, but I was irrationally terrified.
Catherine Connolly.
So what that means is not letting my 12-year-old son walk on the street, seeing a truck do a U-turn and thinking that it's following me, having to stop because I'm shaking so bad. And in fact, the truck was not following me, but my reaction was to have my heart in my mouth.
Ultimately, no matter how you dice it, I did have an opportunity.
Matt Galloway.
If I'd had amazing hindsight of 2020 to have stopped what occurred. And I keep thinking to myself, I should have noticed. These guys shouldn't have been talking to this guy. I should have not had my head down those 20 seconds when I was washing dishes. Things I could have done. What the hell was I thinking?
So you do a lot of studying. You spend hours and hours and hours. You study and study and study, talking to the officers, making sure they understand. Talk to your witnesses again, and always coming back to... I get this flash of seeing Matthew. I wanted it so tight that there was no way that they were gonna get out of this.
One of the things that happened when I got to the fence.
Reggie Flutie.
It was just such an overwhelming amount of blood. And we tried to wear protective gloves, but we had a real cheap sheriff at the time, and so he bought us shit gloves. You put them on, they kept breaking. So finally you just ran out of gloves. And so you think, well, you figure, don't hesitate. That's what your brain keeps telling you all the time, don't hesitate. And so you just keep going and you try to help Matthew and you find an airway, and that's just what you do,
The thing I wasn't telling you before is that Reggie is my dog, Marge Murray. And when she first told me that she wanted to be on the sheriff's department, I thought there could be no better place for her. She could handle anything that came her way.
Probably a day and a half later, the hospital called me and told me that Matthew had HIV. They said, the doctor said, you've been exposed. And you've had a bad exposure. Because I had been building a lean-to for my llamas, and my hands had a bunch of open cuts on them, so I was kind of screwed. And you think, oh shoot,
Would you like to talk about losing sleep?
And so I said to her, I was like, okay, what do I do? And they said, get up here. And so I got up there and we started on the ATZ drugs immediately.
Now they've told me that this is a medication that if administered 36 hours after you've been exposed, it can maybe stop your getting the disease.
That is a mean, nasty medicine. Me? I've lost 10 pounds and a lot of my hair. Yeah.
And quite frankly, I just wanted to lash out at somebody. Not Matthew. Please understand that not one of us was mad at Matthew. Maybe he wanted to squeeze McKinney's head off. And I think of Henderson and two absolutely human beings who have caused so much grief for so many people. This has been horrible for my whole family, but especially for her and her daughters.
I think it brought home to my girls what their mom does for a living.
Well, Reggie, you know what I'm going to tell you now.
And my parents, they both said the same damn.
You are quitting this damn job.
And it's just a parent thing. Because they're terribly proud of you because you do a good job, whether it's handling a drunk or handling a case like this. It's just your, they don't want you getting hurt.
Like I said, there's a right way, there's a wrong way, and then there's Reggie's way.
So finally, I said,
Oh, for God's sake, not enough, Francis!
You are so stubborn!
they say I'm stubborn, I don't believe them. It's just, I think, okay, I've heard your opinion, now here's mine. I'm 39 years old, what are you gonna do, spank me?
Oh, don't you give me any ideas now, Reggie.
It looked pretty funny. What can they say?
I just really hope she doesn't go before I do. I couldn't handle that.
University of Wyoming President Philip Dubois.
Well, this is a young person who read my statement on the Denver Post story and wrote me an email to me directly and said,
You and the straight people of Laramie, Wyoming, are just as guilty of the beating of Matthew Shepard as the Germans who looked the other way are guilty of the deaths of the Jews, the gypsies, and the homosexuals. You have taught your straight children to hate their gay and lesbian brothers and sisters. And unless and until you acknowledge that Matthew's beating is not just the work of some crazies, that it's not just some coincidence, you have Matthew's blood on your hands.
I just can't begin to tell you what that does to you. And it's like, you can't possibly know what I'm thinking. You can't possibly know how this has affected me and my family and my community.
The first week alone, vigils for Matthew Shepard were held in Laramie, Denver, Fort Collins, and Colorado Springs. Soon after, in Detroit, Chicago, San Francisco, Washington, D.C., Atlanta, Nashville, Minneapolis, and Portland, Maine, among others. In Los Angeles, 5,000 people gathered in New York City. A political rally ended in civil disobedience and hundreds of arrests. The Poudre Valley Hospital website receives close to 1 million visitors from across the country and around the world, all expressing hope for Matthew's recovery. Matthew Shepard medical update at 9 a.m., Sunday, October 11th.
As of 9 a.m. today, Matthew Shepard remains in critical condition. The family continues to emphasize that the media respect their privacy. The family would also like to thank the American public for their kind thoughts and concern for Matthew.
There are certain things when I sit in church,
Jedediah Schultz.
and the Reverend will tell you flat out that he doesn't agree with homosexuality. And I don't know. I feel like I'm going through changes right now. I'm still learning about myself. I feel like I don't know enough about certain things to make a choice that says homosexuality is right when you've been raised your whole life that it's not. And right now, I would say that I don't agree with it. Yeah, that I don't agree with it. But maybe that's just because I couldn't do it. And speaking in religious terms, I don't think that's how God intended it to happen. But like, I don't hate homosexuals. Like, I'm not gonna persecute them or anything like that. Like at all. Like, that's not gonna be getting in the way between me and the other person. At all.
Well, it's preached in schools that being gay is okay and yada yada yada.
Comrade Miller.
And if my kids ask me, well, I'd sit them down and say, well, this is what gay people do. This is what animals do. And I tell them, this is the life, this is the lifestyle, this is what they do. And I'd say that's why I believe it's wrong.
There's more gay people around than what you think.
Murdoch Cooper.
Doesn't really bother anybody, because most of them that are gay or lesbian, they know damn well who to talk to. And if you step out of line, you're asking for it. Now, some people's been saying that he made a pass at them. And you don't just pick up regular people. Now, I'm not excusing their actions, but it made me feel a little bit better knowing that it was partially Matthew Shepard's fault and partially the guys that did it. I don't know. Maybe it's 50-50.
Yes, as a lesbian, I was more concerned for my safety.
Zachy Salmon.
I think we all were. And I think it's because somewhere inside we know it can happen to us anytime, you know? I mean, I would be afraid to walk down the street and display any sort of physical affection to my partner. You don't do that here in Laramie.
Well, there's this whole idea, you know? You leave me alone, I leave you alone.
Jonas Slonaker.
And it's even in some of the Western literature, you know? Live and let live. That is such crap. I talk to my friends about it, even my gay friends, they bring it up sometimes, and I'm like, that's such crap, you know? Because what it basically boils down to is that if I don't tell you I'm a fag, then you don't beat the crap out of me. I mean, what's so great about that? That's our great philosophy.
We went to the candle vigil, Zubaida Ullah, and it felt so good to be with people who felt like shit. And I keep feeling like I don't deserve to feel this bad. You know, but then someone got up and he said, blah, 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 I'm saying it wrong, but basically he said, come on, guys. Let's show the world that Laramie is not this kind of a town. Yeah, but it is this kind of a town. If it wasn't this kind of a town, then why did it happen here? I mean, like, that's a lie. Like, it happened here. So how could it not be the kind of a town where this kind of a thing happened? It's like looking at an Escher painting getting all confused. It's like totally circular logic. Like, how can you even say that? And we have to mourn this crime. Yeah, we have to be sad that we live in a town, a state, a country where shit like this happens. I mean, these are people trying to distance themselves from this crime. But we have to own this crime. I feel everyone has to own it. Because we are like this. We are like this. We are like this. I was in the fireside one afternoon when I ran into two friends of Aaron McKinney. Shannon and Jen. So you guys knew Aaron well, right?
Yeah, you know, when I first heard about the whole thing, I thought it was really, really awful. I don't know whether Aaron was fucked up or coming down from something or what, but Matthew had money. Shit, he had better clothes than I did. Matthew was a little rich bitch.
You shouldn't call him a rich bitch, though. That's not right.
I'm not saying he's a bad guy either. He was just at the wrong place at the wrong time. Said the wrong things.
I won't lie to you. There were times when I was all messed up on meth. I thought about Rob. I never did, but it was there. It was easy money. Aaron's done that thing before. They've both done it. I remember one time they went to Cheyenne to go do it. They came back with probably $300. I don't know if they chose, like, gay people as their particular targets before, but anyone that looked like they had a lot of money and, they could outnumber or overpower its fair game.
But do you think that there was any homophobia involved in this that contributed to some of it?
Probably. It probably would have pissed him off that Matthew was gay because he didn't like the gay people I've seen him interact with. He was fine, as long as they didn't hit on him. As long as it didn't come up.
As long as they weren't doing it in front of him.
Do you guys even get the impression that Aaron knew other gay people?
I'm sure he knew people that were gay. Oh, there was a couple of people Look, I'm not saying it's bad or anything, because I don't know, but half the people I know in Laramie are gay.
Well, what would you guys say to Aaron if you could see him right now?
If I saw...
First off, I'd ask if he'd ever do any more tweak.
If I saw Aaron now, I'd be like, man, why'd you fuck up like that? But I'd want to make sure he's doing good in there. But I'm sure he is, though. I'd probably just want to hang out with him.
Smoke a bowl with him.
I bet he wants one so bad.
So you guys, you both went to Laramie High?
Yeah, can't you tell we're a product of our society?
Our day traditionally given over to nothing more profound than college exuberance and the fortunes of the University of Wyoming football team, this community on the High Plains had a different kind of homecoming this Saturday, as many searched their souls in the wake of a apparent, vicious, anti-gay hate crime.
University President Philip Dubois.
This was homecoming weekend. There were a lot of people in town, and there was a homecoming parade that was scheduled. And then the students organized to tag onto the back of it, behind the banner, supporting Matt. And everyone was wearing the armbands that the students had created.
I live in the center of town,
Gary Woods.
and my apartment has windows on two opposite sides. One goes north, one goes south. And that is exactly the homecoming parade route. Now, on the day of the parade, I had a cast on my leg because of a fall. So I was very disappointed, because I wanted to walk with the people that were marching for Matthew Shepard, but I couldn't. So I watched from my apartment. Yeah, and it was... It was just... I'm 52 years old. And I'm gay. I've lived here for many years, and I've seen a lot. And I was very moved when I saw the tag on the end of that parade. About 100 people marching behind a banner for Matthew Shepard. Well, then the parade went down to the end of the block to make a U-turn, and I went to the other side of my apartment to wait for it to come down south the other street.
I was right up front, where they were holding the banner for Matthew Shepard. And let me tell you, I've never had goosebumps so long in my life. A mass of people, families, mothers holding their 6-year-old kids, tying these armbands around these 6-year-old kids and trying to explain to them why they should be wearing the banner. It was incredible. I mean, it was absolutely one of the most beautiful things I've ever done in my life.
And sure enough, about 10 minutes go by and the parade starts coming down the street. And then I noticed the most incredible thing. As the parade was coming down the street, the amount of people marching for Matthew Shepard had grown 5 times. There were 500 people marching behind a banner for Matthew Shepard. Yeah, and I started to cry. Tears were streaming down my face, and I thought, thank God that I got to see this in my lifetime. And my second thought was, thank you, Matthew.
I really haven't been all that involved per se. My husband's on the highway patrolman, so that's really the only way I've known about it. Now, when I first found out, I just thought it was horrible. I can't. Nobody deserves that. I don't care who you are. But the other thing that wasn't brought out, at the same time this happened, that patrolman was killed. And there was nothing. They didn't say anything about the old man that killed him. He was driving down the road, and he shouldn't have been driving, and he killed him. And it was just a little piece in the paper. You know, my husband worked with him. This man was brand new on the force, and it's just a little piece in the paper. And we lost one of our guys. A lot of my feeling is that the media is portraying Matthew Shepard as a saint, and making him as a martyr, and I don't think he was. I don't think he was that pure. Now, I didn't know him, but some of the things I found out, I mean, it's scary, you know, about his character and spreading AIDS and a few other things, too. Him being the kind of person that he was a barfly. And I think he pushed himself around. I think he flaunted it. Everybody's got problems. Why they exemplify him, I don't know. What's the difference if you're gay? A hate crime is a hate crime. If you murder someone, you hate them. It doesn't matter if you're gay or a prostitute, whatever. I don't understand. I don't understand.
Company member Lee Fondakowski.
This is one of our last days on our second trip to Laramie. Greg and I have been conducting interviews non-stop, and we are exhausted.
We are to meet Father Roger at 7:30 in the morning. I was wishing we could skip it altogether, but here we go. 7:30 a.m., 2 queers and a Catholic priest.
Matthew Shepard has served us well. Do you realize that? He has served us well. And I do not mean to condemn Matthew to perfection, but I cannot think of anyone who has done more for our community than Matthew Shepard. And I'm not going to sit here and just say I was this bold guy, no fear. I mean, I was scared, right? I was very vocal in the community when this happened, and I thought, you know, should we call the bishop and ask him permission to do the vigil? And then I thought, hell no. I'm not going to do that. Because his permission doesn't make it correct. Do you realize that? And I'm not knocking bishops, okay? But what is correct is correct. You people are just out here in a search for it. I will trust you. I will trust that if you write a play of this, that you say it right. You say it correct. I think you have a responsibility to do that. Look, don't make matters worse. You think violence is what they did to Matthew? They did do violence, but every time that you're called a fag or a les or a right, yeah. That is violence. That is the seed of violence. And I would resent it immensely if you used anything I say to somehow cultivate that kind of violence, even in its smallest form. I would resent it immensely. You need to know that.
Thank you, Father, for saying that.
Just deal with what is true. You know what is true. You need to do your best to stay correct.
Andrew Gomez.
I was in there. I was in jail with Aaron in December. I got thrown in over Christmas. Assault and battery, 2 counts. I don't want to talk about it. But we were sitting there, you know, trying to eat my Christmas dinner, you know, trying to eat my stuffing, my motherfucking bread, my little roller white. And I asked him, I was like, hey, homie, tell me something, please. Why did you... You know, I was thinking about how I worded this, but then I was like, well, why did you kill a faggot if you were destined to be a faggot later? You know, I mean, think about it. He's either gonna get humped a lot, or he's gonna die. So why would you do that, man? Think about that. I don't understand that, man. And you know what he tells me? Honest to God, this is what he said. He goes, he tried to grab my dick. Well, that's what he said, man. He's dumb, dog. He didn't even act like it was nothing. Now, I heard there was auctioning those boys off. Up there in the Max Ward, you know, where all the killers go. I heard that when they found out that Aaron was coming to prison, there was auctioning those boys off. Like, oh, I want him. I'll put aside like 5, 6, 7 cartons of cigarettes. Cigarettes! Auction his ass off. I'd be scared to go to prison if I was those 2 boys.
Hello, Reverend. Yes, hello. I believe your wife told you a bit about why I'm contacting you?
Yes, she did. Let me tell you, I don't know that I want to talk to anybody about any of this incident. I'm somewhat involved, and I don't
yes,
think...
I completely understand, and I don't blame you. You know, I went to your services on Sunday.
You went to services on Sunday?
Yes, I did.
On Sunday?
This past Sunday.
Did I meet you?
You welcomed me at the beginning, I believe.
I see. Well, let me tell you, I'm not afraid to be controversial or to speak my mind, and that's not necessarily the views of my congregation, per se. Now, as I said, I'm somewhat involved. That half the people in this case, well, the girlfriend of the accused, Kristen Price, is a member of her congregation, and one of the accused, Aaron McKinney, has visited. Now, these 2 people, the accused, have forfeited their lives. We have been after the 2 for ages, trying to get them to live right, to do right. Now, one boy is on suicide watch, and I am working with him. And until they put him on the chair and turn on the juice, I will work for his salvation. Now, I think they deserve the death penalty. I will try to deal with them spiritually.
Right. I understand.
Now, as for the victim, I know that lifestyle is legal, but I will tell you one thing. I hope that Matthew Shepard, as he was tied to that fence, had the time to reflect on a moment when someone had spoken the word of the Lord to him, and that before he slipped into a coma, he had a chance to reflect on his lifestyle.
Thank you, Reverend. I appreciate your speaking with me.
About 11:30 that night, I had just barely gone to bed, and Margot, our chief operating officer, calls me and says his blood pressure is starting to drop. Well, let's wait and see. She calls me about 10 after. He had just died. So I quick got up, got dressed, went to the ICU where the family was, and Judy came up to me. And she put her arms around me. And I put my arms around her, and we just stood there.
honestly, for about 10 minutes, because what else do you do? And then we had to sit there and talk about things that you just, Dennis, it's now public knowledge, and I'm gonna go out there and tell the whole world that this has happened, because by that point we knew it was the world. It was the entire world. So, Judy told me what she wanted me to say, and I went out there at 4 a.m. At 12 midnight on Monday, October 12th, Matthew Shepard's blood pressure began to drop. We immediately notified his family, who were already at the hospital. At 12:53 a.m., Matthew Shepard died. His family was at his bedside. The family did release the following statement. First of all, the family would like to thank the entire world for the overwhelming response for their son. The family was grateful that they did not have to make a decision regarding whether or not to continue life support for their son. Like a good son, he was caring to the end and removed guilt or stress from his family. He came into the world premature and left the world premature. Matthew's mother said, "Go home. Give your kids a hug. And do not let a day go by without telling them that you love them." And I don't know how I let that happen. I lost it on national television, but you know, we had been up for like 72 hours straight and gone home and gone to bed for half an hour and had to get up and come back in, and maybe I was just late. I don't know. But in a moment of complete brain deadness, while I was out there reading the statement, I thought about my own 4 daughters. And go home, hug your kids. She doesn't have her kid anymore. And there I am, I'm thinking, this is so lame. And then we started to get people sending us emails and letters, and most of them were generally very kind, but I did get this one. This guy wrote to me and said, "Do you cry like a baby on TV for all of your patients? Or just the faggots?" And as I told you before, homosexuality is not a lifestyle with which I agree. But having been thrown into this, I guess I just didn't understand the magnitude with which some people hate. And of all the letters that we got, there were maybe 2 or 3 that were like that. Most of them were thank you for your caring and compassion. Matthew had caring and compassion from the moment he got here.
I spoke with Doc today, and I told him that we would soon be coming back out for the upcoming trials of Russell Henderson and Aaron McKinney. This is what he had to say.
I'll tell you what, those two boys to death, that would defeat everything Matt would be thinking about on them. Because he would not want those two boys to die. He'd want to leave them with hope. H-O-P-E. Just like the whole world hoped that Matt would survive. The whole thing, you see, the whole thing ropes around hope. H-O-P-E.
Snowing so bad. Big, huge, wet snowflakes. And there were thousands of people there, in just black, with umbrellas everywhere. And there were two churches, one for the immediate family, invited guests, people of that nature, and then one for everyone else who wanted to be here. And then still, hundreds of people who couldn't fit into either of these churches. And there was this big park by the church, and that's where these people were. And this park was full.
Liturgy today is an Easter liturgy. It finds its meaning in the resurrection. The service today invites your full participation. The Lord be with you.
Also with you.
Let us pray. And I guess it was the worst storm that they have had. Tiffany Edwards, like more than anyone could ever tell. Like trees fell down and power went out for a couple days because of it, and I just thought it's like the forces of the universe at work, you know? Like whatever higher spirit, you know, like that blows storms was blowing this storm. For our brother Matthew, let us pray to our Lord Jesus Christ, who once said, I am the resurrection and the life. We pray to the Lord.
Hear us, Lord.
My most striking memory from the funeral,
Terry Drake, Casper Star Tribune,
was seeing the Reverend Fred Phelps from Kansas. That whole scene go up in the park.
Do you believe the Bible? Do you believe you're supposed to separate the precious from the vile? You don't believe that part of the Bible. You stand over there ignorant of the fact that the Bible, 2 times for every time it talks about God's love, it talks about God's hate.
Some high school kids who got out early came over and started yelling at the people at the protest, the Fred Phelps people. And across the street, you had people lining up for the funeral. Well, I remember this one guy, this total skinhead, and he was wearing like leather and spikes everywhere. And he came over from across the street where the protest was, and he came into the crowd, and I just thought, oh, this is gonna be a really ugly confrontation. But then he started leading them in amazing grace.
We wouldn't be here if this wasn't the murder the state was going to deal with. The state deals with hundreds of murders every single day, but this murder is different because the fags are bringing us out here trying to make Matthew Shepard into the poster boy for the gay lifestyle, and we're going to answer it. It's just that simple.
6 months later, the company returned to Laramie for the trial of Russell Henderson, the first of the 2 perpetrators. It was to be a capital murder trial. When we got to the Albany County Courthouse, Fred Phelps was already there.
You don't like that attribute of God?
But so was Romaine Patterson.
That perfect attribute of God. Well, we love that attribute of God, and we're going to preach it because God's hatred is pure. It's a determination. It's a determination that he's going to send some people to hell. That's God's hatred. We're standing here with God's message. We're standing here with God's message. Is homosexuality, is being a fag, okay? What do you mean it's not for you to judge? If God doesn't hate fags, then why does he put him in hell? You see the barrenness and the sterility of your silly arguments when set over against some solid gospel truth. Barren and sterile like your lifestyle, your silly arguments.
After seeing Fred Phelps protesting at Matthew's funeral and finding out that he was coming to Laramie for the trial of Russell Henderson, I decided that someone needed to stand toe-to-toe with this guy and show the differences. And I think
times like this when talking about hatred, as much as the nation is right now, that someone needs to show that there's a better way of dealing with that kind of hatred. So, our idea is to dress up like angels. And so we have designed an angel outfit. For our wings are huge. They're like big ass wings. And there'll be 10 to 20 of us that are angels. And what we're gonna do is we're going to encircle Phelps. Because of our big wings, we are going to completely block him. So this big ass band of angels comes in. We don't say a fucking word. We just turn our backs to him and we stand there. And we are people bringing forth a message of peace and love and compassion. And we're calling it angel action. Yeah, this 21-year-old little lesbian is ready to walk the line with him.
When those old preachers laid their hands on me, it's called an ordination. Then they deliver a charge. Mine is from Isaiah 58:1. Cry aloud, spare not, and lift up thy voice like a trumpet, and show my people their transgressions.
And I knew that my angels were going to be taking the brunt of everything he had to yell and say. I mean, we were going to be blocking his view. And he was going to be pissed off to all hell. So, I went out and bought all my angels earplugs.
The court is in session.
Romaine Patterson's sister, Trish Sager.
As soon as they started jury selection, you know, everybody was coming into my shop with, I don't want to be on the trial, I hope they don't call me, or, oh my God, I've been called, how do I get out? Just trying to get us far away from it as they could. Very fearful that they were going to have to be part of the jury. And then, I heard Henderson had to sit in the courtroom as they questioned the prospective jurors. And one of the questions that they asked is, would you be willing to put this person to death? And I understand that a lot of the answers were yes, I would.
Yes, I would, Your Honor.
Yes, sir.
Absolutely.
Yes, sir. No problem.
Yep. Well, can you imagine hearing that? Juror after juror after juror.
You entered a not guilty plea earlier, Mr. Henderson, but I understand you wish to change your plea today. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Do you understand, Mr. Henderson, that the recommended sentence here is 2 life sentences?
Yes, sir.
Do you understand that those may run concurrently or they may run consecutively?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Henderson, I will now ask you how you wish to plead. Guilty or not guilty?
Guilty.
Before the court decides on whether your sentences will be concurrent or consecutive, I understand there are statements to be made by at least one individual.
This is a statement made to the court by Lucy Thompson.
As the grandmother and the person who raised Russell along with my family, we have written the following statement. Our hearts ache for the pain and suffering that the shepherds have faced. Many times throughout the day, I have thought about Matthew, and he will continue to be in our thoughts and prayers as we know that your pain will never go away. You have shown us such mercy in allowing us to have this plea, and we are so grateful that you're giving us all the opportunity to live. Your Honor, we as a family hope that as you sentence Russell, you do so concurrently. 2 life terms for the Russell we know and love, Your Honor. We humbly plead.
forever. Thank you. Mr. Henderson, you have a constitutional right to make a statement. Do you have anything you'd like to say?
Yes, I would, Your Honor. Mr. and Mrs. Shepherd, there is not a moment that goes by where I don't see what happened that night. I know what I did was wrong, and I'm very sorry for what I did. You have my greatest sympathies for what happened. I hope that one day you can find it in your heart to forgive me. Your Honor, I know what I did was very wrong. I am very sorry for what I did, and I'm ready to pay the debt for what I did.
Mr. Henderson, you drove the vehicle that took Matthew Shepherd to his death. You bound him to that fence in order that he might be more savagely beaten, in order that he might not escape to tell his tale. You left him out there for 18 hours, knowing full well he was there, perhaps having an opportunity to save his life, and you did nothing. Mr. Henderson, this court does not believe that you really feel any true remorse for your part in this matter. And I wonder, Mr. Henderson, whether you truly realize the gravity of what you have done. The court finds it appropriate, therefore, that your sentence be ordered as follows. As to count 1, that being felony murder with robbery, you are to serve a period of imprisonment for the term of your natural life. On count 3, kidnapping, you are to serve a period of imprisonment for the term of your natural life. Sentencing for count 1 to run consecutively to sentencing for count 3.
After the hearing, we spoke with Jean Pratt, Russell Henderson's Mormon home teacher.
I've known Russell's family for 38 years. Russell's only 21, so I've known him his whole life. I ordained Russell a priest of the Mormon Church, so you can imagine when this happened. Disbelief. After the sentencing, the church held a disciplinary council, and the result of that meeting was to excommunicate Russell from the church. So what that means is your name is taken off the records of the church, so nobody's assigned to visit you. You don't remember that person when you're praying. You don't bring up their name in certain contexts, so you just disappear. Russell's reaction to this was not positive. It hurt him. And it hurt him, too, to realize how serious a transgression he had committed. But I will not desert Russell. And that is a matter of my religion and my friendship with the family.
Before we left Laramie, we met again with Rebecca Hilliker at the theater department. She's putting on Angels in America this year at the university.
I think that is the focus the university has taken, is that we have a lot of work to do, that we have an obligation to find ways to reach our students, and the question is, how do you move? How do you reach a whole state where there's some very deep-seated hostility towards gays? How do you reach them? This is just the beginning. And guess who's trying out for the lead?
My parents! Oh man, my parents were like, so what shows are you doing this year for school? And I was like, Angels in America. And I told them the whole list of plays. They were like, Angels in America? Is that show you did in high school? That scene you did in high school? And I was like, yeah. And they were like, are you gonna audition for it? And I was like, yeah. And then we got in this huge argument. And the best thing I knew I had on them was, it was right after they'd seen me in a production of Macbeth. And on stage, I murdered Lady Macduff and this kid and these 2 other guys. And they were like, well, homosexuality is a sin. You know, she kept saying that. I'm like, Mom, you just saw me play a murderer tonight. Didn't seem to have any problem with that.
I tell you, I never prepared this much for an audition in my life. I mean, never, ever, not even close.
Not having to deal that much with the gay society here in Laramie.
Detective Sergeant Rod Debris.
Well, once we started working into the case and actually speaking to the people that were gay and finding out what their underlying fears were, well, then it's sort of hit home. This is America. You don't have the right to feel that fear. And we're still going to have people who hold with the old ideals. And I was probably one of them 14 months ago. I'm not going to put up with it, and I am not going to listen to it. And if they don't like my views on it, fine. The door goes both ways. I've already lost a couple of buddies. I don't care. I feel more comfortable, and I can sleep at night.
Well, you're tested every 3 months. Reggie Flutie, and I was able to have the DNA test done. So they got me up to Fort Collins, drew the blood there, and then they flew it all the way to Michigan, did all the DNA work there, and then, which was a week later,
I know I was negative for good. I'll tell you, we were all on our knees saying, Hail Marys, and you're just elated, you know, you think, thank God. And so what's the first thing she does?
I stuck my tongue right in my husband's mouth.
I was just so happy, you know, you're just so happy.
And you know, I thought, I hope I did this service well. You know, I hope I did it with some sort of integrity. So, you're just really happy. and my daughters just bawled.
They were so happy.
And the four.
Oh, Lord.
We went out and got shit-faced. Oh, it was great. And everybody bought me drinks too. And everybody hugged and cried. And I kissed everybody who walked through the door.
Didn't you know that?
I didn't care if they were male or female. They each got a kiss on the lips.
Now, what about what I just said? Don't you understand?
Get over it, Mom.
Almost a year to the day that Matthew Shepard died, the trial for Aaron James McKinney was set to begin.
Probably the question on everyone's mind is how the McKinney case will proceed.
Cal Raruka, prosecuting attorney.
And it's the decision of the county attorney's office that it will be a death penalty case.
Part of me wants McKinney to get it. And I'm not proud of that. I was on and off and off and on. I'm not sure what I would do. I'm just too personally involved.
Oh, I believe in the death penalty 100%. You know, because I want to make sure that guy's ass dies. This is the one instance where I truly believe with all my heart, an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth.
I don't believe in the death penalty. It is too much for me. I don't believe one person should be killed as redemption for having killed another. Two wrongs don't make a right.
How can I protest if the Shepherds want McKinney dead? I mean, I can't interfere with that, but on a personal level, I knew Aaron in grade school. Yeah, we never really called him Aaron, we called him AJ. And I mean, how can you put AJ McKinney? How can you put AJ McKinney to death?
I think that right now, our most important teachers must be Aaron McKinney and Russell Henderson. They have to be our teacher. How did you learn? What did we as a society do to teach you that? And see, I don't think many people will let them be their teacher. I think it would be just wonderful if the judge said, in addition to your sentence, you must tell your story. You must tell your story.
All rise. State of Wyoming versus Aaron James McKinney. Docket case number 6381. The Honorable Warden Norwalk presiding. To court is in session.
During the trial of Aaron McKinney, the prosecution played a taped recording of his confession.
My name is Rod Debris, Sergeant for the Sheriff's Office. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and may be used against you in the court of law.
The following is an excerpt of that confession.
So you guys, you and Russ, go to the fireside. So you're at the fireside by yourselves, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Where do you go after you leave the fireside?
Some kid wanted to ride home.
What's he look like?
Like a queer.
Such a queer dude.
He looks like a queer?
Yeah, like a fag, you know?
Okay. How'd you meet him?
Well, he said he wanted to ride home. I just thought, well, the dude's drunk. Let's just take him home.
When did you and Russ talk about jacking him up?
We kind of talked about it at the bar.
Okay, what happened next?
Well, we drove him out past Walmart. We get over there and he starts grabbing my leg, grabbing my genitals, and I was like, look, I'm not a fucking faggot. If you touch me again, you're gonna get it. I don't know what the hell he was trying to do, but I beat him pretty bad. I think I killed him.
What'd you beat him with?
Blacked out. My fist, my pistol, the butt of the gun. I'm wondering what happened to me. I had a few beers and it was weird. I don't know. It's like I could see what was going on, but I don't know. It was like someone else was doing it.
What is the first thing that he said or that he did in the truck that made you hit him?
Well, he put his hand on my leg. He slid his hand like he was gonna grab my balls.
When that defense team argued that McKinney did what he did because Matthew made a pass at him, I just wanted to vomit. Because that's like saying it's okay. It's like the Twinkie defense. When that guy killed Harvey Milton Moscow, it's the same thing.
As much as part of me didn't want the defense of them saying that it was a gay bashing or a gay panic, part of me is really grateful. Because I was very scared in the trial they were going to try and say that it was a robbery or that it was about drugs. So when they used the words gay panic, I thought this is good. If nothing else, then the truth is coming out. The truth is going to be told.
Did he ever try to defend himself against you or hit you back?
Yeah, sort of. He tried his little swings or whatever, but it wasn't very effective.
Okay. How many times did you hit him inside the truck before you guys stopped where you left him?
I'd say I hit him probably 2 or 3 times, maybe 3 times with my fists and about 6 times with the pistol.
Did he ask you to stop?
Well, yeah, he was getting the shit kicked out of him.
What did he say?
Well, after he asked me to stop, most of all he was doing was screaming.
So Russ kind of dragged him over to the fence, I'm assuming, and tied him up?
Yeah, something like that. I just remember Russ was laughing at first, but then he got pretty scared.
Was Matthew conscious when Russ tied him up?
Yeah, I told him to turn around and don't look at my license plate, because I was scared he was going to tell the police. And then I asked him what my license plate said. He read it, and so that's why I hit him a few more times.
Just to be sure. So, obviously, you don't like gay people.
No, I don't.
Would you say you hate them?
I really don't hate them, but you know, when they start coming on to me and stuff like that, I get pretty aggravated.
Did he threaten you?
What, this gay dude?
Yeah.
Not really.
Can you answer me one thing? Why did you guys take his shoes?
I don't know. Now I'm never going to see my son again.
I don't know, you're probably go to court sometime today.
Today? You mean I'm just going to go in there and plead guilty or not guilty today?
Oh, no, you're going to be arraigned today.
He's going to die for sure?
There is no doubt Mr. Shepard is going to die.
So what are they going to do? Give me 25 to life or just the death penalty and get it over with?
That's not our job. That's the judge's job and the jury.
Has the jury reached a verdict?
We have, Your Honor. We, the jury, impaneled and sworn to try the above entitled case, after having well and truly tried the matter, unanimously find as follows. As to the charge of kidnapping, we find the defendant, Aaron James McKinney, guilty. As to the charge of aggravated robbery, we find the defendant, Aaron James McKinney, guilty. As to the charge of felony murder kidnapping, we find the defendant, Aaron James McKinney, guilty. As to the charge of felony murder robbery, we find the defendant, Aaron James McKinney, guilty. As to the charge of premeditated first-degree murder, we find the defendant, Aaron James McKinney, not guilty. As to the lesser included offense of second-degree murder, we find the defendant, Aaron James McKinney, guilty.
Aaron McKinney was found guilty of felony murder, which meant that the jury could give him the death penalty. That evening, Judy and Dennis Shepard were approached by McKinney's defense team, who pled for their client's life. The prosecution indicated that they would defer to the family's wishes as to whether or not to pursue the death penalty. The next morning, Dennis Shepard made a statement to the court. Here is some of what he said.
My son, Matt, did not look like a winner. He was rather uncoordinated and wore braces from the age of 13 until the day he died. However, in his all too brief life, Matt proved that he was a winner. On October 6th, 1998, my son tried to show the world that he could win again. On October 12th, 1998, my firstborn son and hero lost. On October 12th, 1998, my firstborn son and hero died 50 days before his 22nd birthday. I keep wondering the same thing that I did when I first saw him in the hospital. What would he have become? How would he have changed the world to make his little piece of it better? Matt officially died in a hospital outside of Fort Collins, Colorado. Matt actually died on the outskirts of Laramie, tied to a fence. You, Mr. McKinney, and your friend, Mr. Henderson, left him out there by himself, but he was not alone. He had his lifelong friends with him, friends that he had grown up with. You're probably wondering who some of these friends were. First, he had the beautiful night sky with the same stars and moon that we used to see through a telescope. Then he had the daylight and the sun to shine on him. And through it all, he was breathing in the scent of pine trees from the snowy range. He heard the wind, the ever-present Wyoming wind, and he had one more friend with him. He had God. And I feel better knowing that he wasn't alone. Matt's beating, hospitalization, and funeral has focused worldwide attention on hate. People have said enough is enough. Good is coming out of evil. I miss my son, but I am proud to be able to say that he is my son. Judy has been quoted as being against the death penalty. It has been stated that Matt was against the death penalty. Both of these statements are wrong. Matt believed that there were crimes and incidents that justified the death penalty. I too believe in the death penalty. I would love nothing better than to see you die, Mr. McKinney. However, this is the time to begin the healing process, to show mercy to someone who refused to show any mercy. Mr. McKinney, I am going to grant you life as hard as it is for me to do so because of Matt. Every time you celebrate a Christmas, a 4th of July, a birthday, remember that Matt isn't. Every day you wake up in your prison cell, remember that you had the ability and the opportunity to stop your actions that night. You robbed me of something very precious. And I will never forgive you for that. Mr. McKinney, I grant you life in the name of one who no longer lives. May you live a long life, and may you thank Matt every day for it.
We used to breed hugs and cry.
and everybody just had tears in their eyes. And then Mr. Shepherd started crying, and that just got me bawling, and everyone just, this is all we've lived and breathed for a year. Daily. This has been my case daily. And now it's over. Maybe now we can move on. Quit being stuck, you know? It hit me today, the moment that I got out of that courthouse, that the reason that God wanted me to find him is for he didn't have to die out there alone, you know? If I wouldn't have came along, they wouldn't have found him for a couple of weeks at least. So it makes me feel really good to know that he didn't have to die out there alone.
I'm just glad it's over. I really am. Ugh. Testifying on that trial was one of the hardest things I've ever done. And don't get me wrong, I love the stage. I really do love it. But it's kind of tricky, right? Because what you have is lawyers questioning you from this angle, but all of the answers need to be funneling there over to the jury. So what you have to do is sort of establish a funneling system. And that's hard for me, because I'm a natural conversationalist. You know, when people ask you a question, you make eye contact and answer that question. But it's kind of tricky when what you have to do is literally scoot over and, in effect, funnel the answers over to the jury. But I was able to do that several times over the course of my testimony.
On our last trip, I had the good fortune of seeing Jedediah Schultz play the role of Pryor in Angels in America. After a performance, we spoke.
I didn't for the longest time let myself become personally involved in the whole Matthew Shepard thing. You know, it didn't seem real. Like, it just seemed way blown out of proportion. Like Matthew Shepard was just a name instead of an individual. I don't know. I don't know. It's weird. It's so weird, man. I just feel bad. You know, just for all that stuff I said. For the person I used to be. That's why I want to go back and I want to see those interviews from last year when I said all that stuff. I can't believe I ever said all that stuff about homosexuals, you know? Like how did I ever let that make me think that you were different from me?
This is Romaine Patterson.
Well, a year ago, I wanted to be a rock star. That was my goal. And now, well, now it's obviously changed in the fact that, throughout the last year, I've really realized my role in taking my part. So now, instead of going to school for music, I'm going to school for communications and political science. Because I have a career in political activism. Actually, I just recently found out that I was going to be honored in Washington, D.C. from the Anti-Defamation League. And every time I think of the Angels or any of the speaking that I've done, Matthew gave me. Matthew's like guiding me down this little path with this light for me to walk down. And every time we get to like a door, he opens it. And he just says, okay, next steps. And if I get to be a rock star on the side, okay.
This is Jonas Salonerger.
Change is not an easy thing. And I don't think people were up to it here. They got what they wanted. Those two boys got what they deserved, and we look good now. Justice has been served. The OK corral. We shot down the village, we sent the prostitutes on the train, the town's cleared up, and we don't need to talk about it anymore. You know, it's been a year since Matthew Shepard died, and they haven't passed shit in Wyoming. Not at the state level, any town, nobody anywhere has passed any kind of laws, anti-discrimination laws, hate crime legislation. Nobody has passed anything anywhere. So what's come out of this? What's come out of this that's concrete or lasting?
We all said we would meet again one last time at the fence.
I've been up to that site in my limousine, okay? And I remember to myself the night Matt and I drove around together. He said to me, Laramie sparkles, doesn't it? And where he was up there, if you sit exactly where he was up there, Laramie sparkles with a low-lying cloud. It's the blue lights that's bouncing off the clouds from the airport, and it goes right over the whole city. I mean, it blows you away. That was right in that spot, and I can just picture in his eyes. I can just imagine exactly what he was seeing. The last thing he saw on this earth was the sparkling lights. We've spent the last 2 days packing up a year's worth of materials and saying our goodbyes. We've been here 6 times and conducted over 200 interviews. Jedediah cried when he said goodbye.
Marge wished us luck, and when we asked her how Laramie would feel seeing a play about itself, she said,
I'm not sure how we would feel. I think we might like it. To show that Laramie isn't the hellhole of the earth would be nice. But that is up to how you portray us, and that in turn is up to how Laramie behaves.
As we were getting off the phone, she says to me,
Will you take care now, honey? I love you.
Doc asked me if I wanted to ghostwrite a book about the whole event. Galloway offered me or anyone else a place to stay if and when we come back to Laramie. He also seemed interested as to whether there'd be any open auditions for the play.
We left Laramie at about 7 in the evening. On the way to Denver, I looked in my rearview mirror to take one last look at the town.
And I will speak with you. I will trust that if you write a play of this, that you say it right. You need to do your best to say it correct.
And in the distance, I could see the sparkling lights of Laramie, Wyoming.